When I was a kid, I didn't have many friends. My mom would take me to the playground sometimes, but before I could play with any other kids, their parents would pull them away. I tried to befriend kids in my neighborhood, but their moms always rushed out and told them don't go near that house. I never understood why. Our house looked just like the rest. My mom looked just like the other moms, and I was a normal kid like everyone else. Hi there! Please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss out on any crazy stories. After a while, I stopped trying to make friends. I was pretty young when I got it in my head that there was something wrong with me. Otherwise, why did no kids want to be my friend? When I was in middle school, I was already a complete loner. I ate my lunch alone in a bathroom stall every day. It wasn't as sad as you might think. You hear a lot when hiding in a semi-public place. Where do you think she goes every day? I heard someone come in. I heard a few sets of footsteps outside my stall. I heard she hides somewhere. I would too if my mom was a criminal. Another girl said. This piqued my curiosity. Who were they talking about? I wondered. Then a third girl chimed in. Poor Tessa. I bet she doesn't even know. They were talking about me. Why would they say my mom was a criminal? My mom had never done anything bad. The girls left when the bell rang, but I stayed hidden in the stall. I was angry that they were making up such lies about my mom. Part of me wanted to push the stall door open and shout, "What about your mom, Lizzie? We all know her brownies for the bake sale were store-bought," but I would never stoop so low. You know how sometimes a single word is enough to make you overthink all day until you're a messy pile of nerves? Imagine how I felt at that moment. I was angry, I was confused, and I was scared for some reason. The next day, I had computer class, but I stayed behind after the teacher locked the door of the computer lab, so I could go on the internet without anyone looking at my screen. Those girls were talking about my mom, I thought, so maybe I should just Google her name? I always wondered why they never did that in the movies, so I went ahead and did it. What I found shook me to the core. There were dozens of articles about my mom, and that was just the first page of the browser. I thought maybe it was some other woman they were talking about, that my mom just happened to share a name with some woman who kidnapped a bunch of kids years ago. But I was wrong. One article had my mom's picture on it and really big. I skimmed through the articles. They all said just about the same thing. Years ago, when I was 2 or 3 years old, my mom started a daycare business in the house. The article said that one day, the parents of the kids went to pick them up, but my mom didn't let them in. She started yelling at them, and soon the garage door opened and she sped out onto the street. It said the parents watched in horror as their kids waved from the back of the speeding van. The articles all said my mom did this for different reasons, but the ending was the same for all. She crashed the van and was arrested. The kids were said to have returned to their parents safely, and that they were strapped tight in the van with loads of pillows and belts to keep them safe. It said that my mom wasn't sent to jail because she was mentally ill, so she was put in therapy instead. I couldn't believe my eyes. Did they throw her in a psych ward? Did she wear a straitjacket? Did she actually do it? I was done with the internet for the day, so I knocked on the door and shouted until the janitor let me out, and I ran out of school. As I walked home, my mind was flooded with worry. Was my mom a criminal? What happened to those kids? Why would she do such a thing? The worst thought of all then popped up in my mind. What if I was one of those kids? I started seeing pieces of myself in every woman around me. What if that woman in the grocery store is my real mom? What if my gym teacher is my real mom? What if that lady chasing her kids around the park is my real mom? When I got home, I went straight to my room. My mom came after me asking me about my day as always, but I locked the door and told her to leave me alone. She pounded on the door, telling me to open it. She was getting angry. I cried silently on one side of the door as she pounded on it, demanding I come out, then softly begged for me at least to eat something. My stomach was growling so loud I bet she heard it. I heard the sound of a plate on the floor, then her footsteps fading, and that's when I opened the door quickly and snatched the plate into my room. That would be my life until I turned 18. For 6 years, my life consisted of going to school, locking myself in my room at home, and sneaking out at night. At night, I felt free. My bedroom was on the ground floor of the house, so I could easily slide my window open and climb out. We lived in a calm neighborhood, so sometimes I'd walk around for hours, or go to the deserted park and sit on the swings looking up at the stars. As I grew up, I started seeing more kids around at night. They were my age, so I guess they discovered the art of sneaking out too. They hung out at the same park as me, and one day they called me over. That's how I made my first friends, at 16. I introduced myself as Tess instead of Tessa. It was the night before my 18th birthday. I knew that now that I would be an adult, I could leave and finally start my life. I did the same thing I did every night. I snuck out when my mom turned her bedroom lights off, but this time it felt different. I packed a bag full of clothes and some necessities, tossed it out the window, and then climbed out myself. I speed walked a block or two until I saw my friend Jody's car. I opened the door, sat in the passenger seat, and nodded at her. She then sped away, out of the suburbs and onto the highway. It was exhilarating. I stuck my head out the window and felt the cold night air on my face. Jody was also excited for me. I was finally leaving my mom and starting to live. I knew exactly where I would go and already had everything planned out. There was a small town a few hours away. Jody would leave me there and I would stay at an inn and get a job at the local diner until I could afford a small apartment. And I could be free there. Freedom felt closer and closer as we drove through the night, but my stomach sank when I heard beeping in the distance. I looked at the rearview mirror and recognized the car speeding towards us. It was my mom. She was beeping like crazy and getting closer by the second. Jody stepped on the gas and soon we couldn't see my mom anymore. My heart was beating out of my chest. My mom looked crazy. Her hair was a mess and her eyes looked like they were about to pop out. I kept looking at the signs on the road until I saw one that said the distance to the town. "It's about a mile away. Are you sure you want to stay here?" Jody asked after I told her to pull over. "I can walk the rest of the way, and then she won't be able to see me," I replied, throwing my backpack over my shoulder. Jody soon drove off, and I started walking. I was calm when she was there, but now that I was all alone in the night, I started panicking. It was quiet, but suddenly I heard the low rumble of a car. It got closer and closer, but there were no lights. I started sweating, even though it was cold. I was in the middle of the highway with no buildings nearby. But I spotted some bushes and ran to hide in them. The rumbling grew louder, and soon it was right in front of me. I heard a car door open and slam shut. Then my mom screaming like a maniac. "This is how you repay me!" she screamed. "I've been patient with you all these years, thinking someday you would come to your senses, and you leave in the middle of the night, you brat!" She sounded so close that I almost screamed. But I slapped my hand over my mouth to cover any noises I made, especially when I felt something crawling on my hand. My mom eventually grew tired, got back in her car, and drove in the direction she came from. I finally let out a breath of relief, and the adrenaline from the encounter allowed me to run the remaining distance to the town. I had been in town for about a week. I had a cozy little room at an inn run by an old lady, and I was already working as a waitress. I felt calm. Everything was going according to plan. Then my power went out. I was enjoying a nice bath in the tub when my lights flickered and then turned off completely. I quickly dried myself off and put on some clothes before running down to the office to ask about my electricity. "It's probably a faulty switch or something," said the owner of the inn. "Go check it out, Sweet Pea. The board is in the basement." She pointed at a dark door with her wrinkled finger. I wanted to ask her to come with me, but I figured it would be rude to ask an old lady to go down a flight of stairs to protect me from the dark. She gave me a flashlight and I went downstairs. It was dusty and colder than anywhere else. The stairs kept creaking and the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. There was another door at the bottom of the staircase. I opened it and stepped into the room. Then I almost fainted when it slammed shut. I turned around instantly and shone my flashlight on my mother's wild face. She slapped a hand over my mouth to keep me from screaming, then replaced it with duct tape and tied me to a chair. She flicked a switch and turned the lights on. Her clothes were all rumpled and she had bags under her eyes. Bags I knew weren't there before. "This is what I have to do to get you to listen," she said to me. I started kicking in my chair and screaming past the duct tape. She couldn't understand what I was saying, so she rolled her eyes and ripped the tape off my mouth. "You're kidnapping me again? Like you did when I was a kid?" I yelled at her. "Shut up!" she yelled back. "You don't know anything." I noticed she had started crying. "What happened to my real mom?" "I know it can't be you. You kidnapped me," I cried. My fake mother's eyes grew wide. "How can you doubt you're my daughter when we look so similar?" she asked me. She shoved a mirror in front of my face and made me look at myself. She was right. We had the exact same nose and eye color. Our teeth were crooked in the same way, and I also had one eyebrow thicker than the other, like her. I guess you're right to doubt, she continued. I'm not your mother, she said with a sob. She then revealed the truth to me, a truth even more heartbreaking than I expected. The woman who raised me did try to kidnap all those kids. She and her sister did. Her sister had a baby daughter at the time. That was me. The woman who raised me was my aunt, and my mom was her accomplice in the crime. They were twins, which is why I look so much like my aunt. And if my mom had survived the car crash, I'd look exactly like her too. I wanted a child, my aunt started saying. I guess my sister had to die for me to have one. But you want to leave me too, she cried. I felt horrible, but I think it was mostly because I felt no pity for the woman in front of me, no sympathy at all. She lied to me my entire life and sentenced me to a childhood without friends. She was a criminal. How did the authorities even let her have me? I wanted to scream for help because I didn't know what she was capable of doing to me. But the door soon burst open and the cops came in. The old innkeeper had heard the commotion downstairs and called the cops. My aunt was arrested then and there and was meant to go to jail because it was her second offense. But honestly, I don't know what happened to her. I still live in that little town. I have a small apartment in one of the few apartment buildings and still work as a waitress. I live pretty comfortable because I never wanted much of a luxurious life. I feel free, most of the time, at least. I have to admit, my stomach still sinks and my palms still get sweaty when I hear the low rumbling of a car. Deep down, I always have the fear that my aunt is coming back to get me, that she'll kidnap me again. Every time I look in the mirror, she's there. I keep waiting for her to pop up, but all she ever seems to do is call my phone and hang up.